So, our family went camping one night. Or rather, it was my aunt's family. It wasn't so easy to get convenient tools and such back then, so nights arrived early and were quite dark. We ate dinner and stared at the stars. Then we drank with some university students who were in the next tent over for a while. And then at some point, my nephew, who was in the 3rd grade at the time, said something. "The night grandpa is here." He wasn't crying or laughing, although he did look a little sleepy, but he came over and told us like he was simply mentioning that a neighbour had come over or something. Thinking that someone from a nearby tent had come over, my aunt asked, "Where?" "Over there." My nephew pointed to some nearby bushes, and behind that was a large forest. There was nobody there. There was nobody there. No, that wasn't right. As our eyes got used to the darkness, we saw something black. "What is that?" I asked my aunt's husband next to me. The university students also turned to look. Everyone's eyes had adjusted to the darkness. What on earth was that? A bear? No, it was too skinny to be a bear, and besides, it was muttering something. And then, right in front of everyone, the figure disappeared. Almost like it melted, but more like it disappeared into the forest. Everyone fell silent. Then, after a few moments, my aunt's husband broke the silence. "Well, we are in the mountains, after all." Everyone nodded in agreement. Hey guys, I'm your host Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. If you've been waiting for the latest volume of Kowabana, then wait no more. Volume 15 is now available in both ebook and paperback format right now, with over 170 stories from the show collected in easy-to-read format. If you're looking for more chills and thrills, then grab your copy now. Don't miss out. This week, we're heading out to the mountains to uncover what lurks far from civilization. And far from help. First up, a young boy goes hunting with his grandfather in the mountains. But while there, they encounter something that's about to change their lives forever. Will they all make it out alive? Find out in Fishies. This happened quite some time ago, so let me write it down as I remember it. When I think about what happened now that I'm much older, it's honestly hard to believe, even though it actually happened to me. Perhaps it's a mixture of not just my memories of the event, but the nightmares I had after as well. To be perfectly honest, I don't remember having any nightmares, but over time, I started to think that that's what they were. This happened around 30 years ago, when I was a junior high student and there were still people who made a living by hunting. My grandfather enjoyed hunting at the time, and he often went out with his 2 beloved hunting dogs. One of them was white, like snow, the other black, like ink, so their names were Shiro and Kuro. My grandfather was proud of his smart dogs, and I remember them quickly becoming friendly with me too. He also sometimes took me with them when it wasn't the snowy season. My parents never looked very happy about that, but it was the one thing I always looked forward to. I don't remember it ever being exhausting, so I guess when I was with him, we never went too far. My grandfather never used buckshot, probably to avoid accidental shootings, and whenever we were on the mountain, he always told me to stay by his side. And if I wasn't by his side, I remember he never fired either. One day, evening arrived and my grandfather oddly hadn't caught a single thing. It was almost time to go home, so he was a little panicked, and I remember he kept muttering things to himself like, "This is weird," and "What on earth is going on?" Looking back on it now, my grandfather had many years of experience in the mountains, so he was no doubt able to sense that something was different to usual. It was around that point that he finally saw it. "What's that?" I followed his puzzled gaze, and there was an animal eating fish sitting on the border between the rocky area and some trees. "Is that a monkey?" Now, it admittedly did look similar to a monkey, but I didn't think it actually was one. It was around the same size, and it had big sad eyes like a monkey, but how can I put it? It had this gross, slippery feeling to it. I can't really describe it well, but it was clearly not something I'd ever seen before. After what happened, I didn't want to look up similar animals in an encyclopedia because I didn't want to remember what happened. As for what was similar or different to other animals, again, I didn't want to check in detail, but at any rate, it was a creature I'd never seen before. "I've never seen an animal like that before, but let's try to take it down, huh?" my grandfather said. He motioned for me to cover my ears, and then he fired. The creature fell behind a rock, and my grandfather reacted as well. Thinking it was down, suddenly the bushes started to move, and we realized he had missed. The dogs immediately ran after it, but before long they returned empty-handed and looking apologetic. We walked over to where that creature had been sitting, and there were a few Japanese salmon lying on the rocks that it hadn't yet finished eating. "Well, this is tonight's dinner then," my grandfather said, as he happily collected the fish. As evening was pressing down on us, we went to a hunting cabin that a friend of my grandfather's had nearby. It was there for hunters to stay in overnight, and it was basically equipped for people to eat and sleep in, and that was it. "Oh, it's good, huh?" my grandfather said several times as he ate the grilled fish, but I was grossed out at the thought of that creature touching them, so I couldn't bring myself to eat any. And there wasn't much fish to begin with, so my grandfather and the dogs quickly finished them all. That night, I found it hard to get to sleep. "Ish!" Then I heard a voice outside. At first I thought I was just imagining it, so I didn't pay much attention. But then the voice got louder, and it sounded like someone speaking with a slurred voice or like baby talk. "Fishies! Fishies!" it sounded like it was saying. Before long, I heard something scraping along the wall of the cabin outside, and then the sound moved higher to the roof. Something's here. Next thing I knew, something with round, glowing red eyes was looking down at me from the corner of the window. It was too dark to clearly see anything, but instinctively I knew it was that creature. And this time, I clearly heard it. "Fishies! Fishies! Give back my fishies!" I screamed before I could stop myself. Shocked, my grandfather came running, but the creature was nowhere to be seen. Of course, he didn't believe me at first, and he laughed me off, saying I must have had a bad dream. But when he saw how terrified I was, he started to take me a little more seriously. After talking with him, I calmed down a little. At that point, I realized it was impossible for a creature to speak our language, and so I convinced myself that it really was just a dream. But still, I remained scared, so my grandfather moved to sleep next to me. Even after my grandfather fell asleep, I stayed awake, terrified. And before long, I sensed that creature again, so I woke him up.
Fishies! Fishies! Give back my fishies!
This time, my grandfather also heard the voice. He had nerves of steel, and he probably didn't want to appear scared in front of me, so he screamed at it. "They're all gone! The dogs and I ate them all up!" Then he loaded his gun and stepped outside. It was pretty dark, so it was unlikely he actually hit the creature, but he was able to chase it away. "Go get it!" he screamed at his dogs as the creature fled. They followed it into the trees, and their barking gradually got further and further away. "I've been walking around this mountain for decades, and that's the first time I've ever seen anything like that," my grandfather said as he reloaded his gun. "If it comes back again, this time I'll be ready for it." There was a sound by the entrance. When we turned to see what it was, we found one of the dogs lying unmoving on the ground. And in the darkness of the forest ahead of us, 2 round eyes glowed.
Fishies! Fishies! Give back my fishies!
I was so terrified that my mind went blank. I couldn't even scream. I just trembled on the spot. But my grandfather was so angry at what happened to his dog that he grabbed his gun and ran after the thing. 2 shots echoed in the darkness, and then everything fell silent. Then, suddenly, I heard a voice that I'll never forget.
Fishies! Fishies!
This time the voice sounded different, like it was shouting in excitement. I don't really remember what happened after that. I was just a kid, but I still realized that both my grandfather and his dogs had died. Terrified, I started running. And I guess at some point I fell from the path and knocked myself unconscious. Luckily, a hunter found me, and when I came back to, I was lying in a hospital bed. I tried desperately to explain to the grown-ups what happened, but they didn't take me seriously. The doctor claimed that I was simply so scared that I lost the ability to tell the difference between what was real and what wasn't. Because of that, I had to spend even more time in the hospital, and sadly, I wasn't even able to attend my grandfather's funeral. In the end, they determined that a bear or some other large wild animal had killed him. Because nobody would believe me, I stopped talking about what happened, and I started telling myself that it really must have been a dream. But if that terrifying night really was just a dream, where on earth did it come from? No matter how many times I look back on it, it just doesn't make any sense. My mother spoke to me about my grandfather's funeral, and apparently one of his hunting friends said to her, "This was definitely not the work of a bear." These days, I can't even eat river fish at all, and when I remember what happened to the dogs, I can't stomach anything at all. A young man having the greatest fishing trip of his life encounters something odd by a mountain stream that will make him question whether it's all worth it or not. Find out why in Mountain Stream Fishing. I heard this story from a friend I had in university. This friend loved mountain stream fishing, and one day he set out early in the morning to go fishing. His destination was the upper reaches of a stream that was pretty deep into the mountain. let me write it down here like what he told me. I drove there, but on the way there weren't even any animal trails to follow, so I had no choice but to walk. The road in was pretty bad, and I even had to climb some cliffs. I even saw claw marks on some trees from bears. Anyway, I finally reached the point where I wanted to fish, and so I started turning over stones right away to find some bugs for bait. "You should have just bought some," I said. "No, there's a very clear difference when you use bait you've caught there. Plus, it's fun." I had gathered local bait before myself as well, but if you're a person who hates bugs, like me, then it's hell. After that, I only ever used salmon roe. At any rate, I reluctantly agreed and urged him to continue. After obtaining the bugs, I got to fishing right away, and the catches were amazing. In just 3 hours, I caught around 15 or 16 fish. But I figured that once the dawn lull was over, that would of course dry up. Maybe many of you know this term, but in fishing, we often use the word lull to describe the mornings and evenings when it's the best time to fish. But even after lunch, they just kept on coming and showed no signs of stopping. It was the best haul of my entire life, and I was so focused that I completely lost track of time. Next thing I knew, it was getting dark. It was already evening. Sensing danger, I started getting ready to go home. And then, I suddenly sensed a presence behind me, so I turned around and a small girl had her back to me. "What are you doing out here?" I asked as I approached her. When she turned around, I was shocked. Her face was that of an old woman, and she was grinning so hard that she looked to be in pain. I was shocked as well. I thought maybe she was sick or something, so I asked her again, but this time more politely. Then her smile disappeared.
"How much longer?"
she muttered over and over. I thought she was crazy, so I bowed my head a little and then left. But then her voice suddenly sounded synthetic, and she asked me, "How much longer are you going to live for?" A chill ran down my spine, and I thought she had to be a ghost. I ran down the mountain as fast as I could. I could still hear her voice on the way. It was almost night on the mountainside, you know. I thought I was losing my mind. And now I can't go back to the best fishing spot I've ever had. My knees trembled in fear. As he was talking, a creepy smile took over my friend's entire face. And a short while after that, he took his own life. A group of friends go camping, but that night they encounter something that, to this day, they still can't explain. What on earth was out there with them that night? Find out in Upside Down V. This happened when I went camping in a bungalow in the mountains with a few friends a while ago. Although we were up in the mountains, it was still a proper camping area with all the necessary facilities, and we enjoyed ourselves there all day. Then, as we were going to bed that night, one of my friends, I'll call him Y, said he was going to go to the toilet. Seemed he had been holding it in for quite some time. Everyone was exhausted, so once we were ready for bed, we all immediately fell asleep. And as I was dozing off, suddenly the bungalow door flung open with a loud bang. Y, who had just gone to the toilet, then stuck his head through the open door. But something about him looked different. His hair and clothes were the same, but, his eyes drooped strangely. They were still in the same position, but now they made a kind of upside-down V on his face. "Why?" I called out, and at almost the exact same time, he said something as well. "Why didn't you help me?" It was Y's voice. "Eh? Help you with what?" But before I had the chance to question him further, the door closed and I heard him running away. Nobody else woke up, but now I was so weirdly afraid that I couldn't sleep. Before long, the door opened again and someone walked inside. Nervously, I checked to see who it was, and Y stood there. He laughed as he got into bed. "Oh man, that was close," he said. I summoned up all my courage to look at his face, and he was, without a doubt, my friend Y. The next morning, I casually asked Y if he saw anyone on his way to and from the toilet, but he said he didn't see anyone. Now, I've never abandoned anyone before in my life, so I had no idea what he was accusing me of. And even now, I still sometimes see those strange droopy eyes in my dreams. Did someone come into our room by mistake? Or was it actually Y? Of course, Y himself is still healthy and happy these days, and I still see him sometimes, but I've never told him what happened that night. On a certain mountain, there's a custom you must follow if you hear a crow-like voice, because if you don't, you won't like what awaits. Find out why in Crow-Like Voice. This is something scary my grandfather once experienced. When he used to work in the mountains, there was something out there that would often approach him suddenly with a low voice like a crow. It would make a sound like a bird, take a few steps closer, make another sound, then take a few steps closer, over and over until it was right in front of him. He was told never to look at it, to ignore it, and definitely don't provoke it. And until it was right in front of you, you mustn't open your eyes, and you also mustn't move. You had to wait until it was right in front of you, and once it stopped making sounds, then you had to say to it, "Please let me through." This creature would always answer, but you weren't allowed to say anything back. Simply wait in silence for it to leave. At first, my grandfather was afraid, so he always did as he was told. But around the 10th time or so it happened, he had started to get used to it, so he was more curious than anything else. And so, one day, he opened his eyes as the creature approached. The world was pitch black. Nothing but darkness. It was morning on the mountain, so for everything to suddenly turn black, he was too scared to even move. "So you looked, huh?" When he heard that, suddenly his normal vision returned. For the next month after that, apparently his life was like a living hell. Every night, he had dreams of someone opening his door and approaching him. Over and over, he'd wake up during the night after having the same dream. Soon, he was too scared to even sleep. And then when someone opened the door and approached him, he woke up again. Unable to tell whether he was even dreaming or awake anymore, he hit both his mental and physical limit. And then, suddenly, it stopped. After that, my grandfather said, with a laugh, he learnt to follow the rules. And while I'm on the subject, my grandmother never heard a voice like that of a bird, just footsteps. So apparently they were told never to engage with the creature. It's unclear whether they were even the same thing, but either way, apparently it did really exist. 2 university students take on a summer job looking after a cabin in the mountains. But is this cabin really as it seems? Find out in Mountain Cabin Job. This happened a few years ago. I was looking for a part-time job during the summer holidays, where I could make some decent money with a friend of mine. In a job magazine, we found an ad that said, "Looking for people to manage a mountain cabin for 1 day." The pay was 20,000 yen. We called immediately, but they told us that the job had been filled. We were disappointed, but the following week, the job was listed in the magazine again, so we called right away. This time, they asked us to come in for an interview at a family restaurant. There, they told us we'd get paid the morning after our night at the cabin. For some reason, the 2 of us agreed to it right away. We got copies of the map to the cabin and, before we knew it, the day had arrived. The cabin was unexpectedly close to the city, and it was located in a forest on some private land. An old man stood by a wire fence with a sign that said, "Private property, no entry." "Ah, you must be here for the job," he said. "I've heard the details, so come on in." He then gave us the key to the cabin, and after a 10-minute walk, the cabin came into view. I imagined it would be made of logs, but this was a small prefab building. It kinda sucked that there was no bath and we had to bring our own food, but it was otherwise perfect and paid well. So we were both in a great mood. And all we had to do was do some light cleaning inside and water the plants outside in the morning and evening. There was no TV, so we played a few handheld games, cards, and other board games to kill time. There also wasn't an air conditioner, so at first I expected it would be hot as hell. But because it was surrounded by trees, it was actually pretty cool. I barely broke a sweat. That night, we ate some rice balls and bread we got from the convenience store, and then got into our pipe bunks early to sleep. That night, I had an awful dream. I can only remember bits of it, but it was like all these hands reached out from under my bed to grab me, and then finally, they tore me apart. When I woke up in the morning, I was in the worst mood, but my friend also looked kinda pale. "What's wrong?" "I had the strangest dream last night and now I kinda feel like crap," I said. "Dream? Me too." He told me what happened in his. "No way! That's the same dream I had too!" Creeped out, we both fell silent for a while. My friend was the first one to break the silence. "Hey, this prefab floor. Maybe I'm just imagining things, but doesn't it seem to move a little?" Now that he mentioned it, when I woke up, I did kind of feel like I was in a waterbed. I thought it was just some lingering effect from the dream, so I didn't think much more of it at the time, but... "Hey, let's check under the floor," my friend said. The prefab floor was actually sitting about 10 centimeters above the ground, supported by a pole in each of the corners. Curious, I agreed, and we went outside. Although it was morning, it was still only 5 a.m, so it was a little dark. My friend then shone his mini pen light in the crack under the floor. Then, he screamed. "What is it?" "Arms. Arms, arms, arms. So many arms. Ah!" Under the floor there were numerous pale arms scattered about. But as soon as I saw where they were cut, I realized they were all mannequin arms. But oddly, on each of the arms there was a Polaroid photo of a woman with a name written on them. There must have been close to 50 of them under there. I touched one of them and they were most definitely mannequins. What the hell is this? Oh, this isn't right. You think we should just get the hell out of here? Idiot. Let's at least wait until we get paid. And if they say anything new then, let's just run. We didn't want to go back inside the building, so we waited outside. We chatted until around 7 a.m, and then the same old guy from the day before appeared. "Morning! You're up early? Well, here's your pay. Now, I have a proposal for you. Would you like to stay another 3 nights? Of course, we'll pay for your troubles. 60,000 yen in total." "No thank you," we said at the same time, and then we started walking as fast as our legs would take us. When I turned around, the old man looked annoyed and was holding his phone to his ear as he glared at us. We didn't see the ad for that job in the magazine again after that. That prefab building is probably not there anymore either. On the way back, my friend said something interesting to me. I wonder if that was some sort of experiment or something. I nodded in agreement. Two friends climbing a mountain one day encounter something rather odd. An injured Tanuki. But it seems something purposefully led them there. Why? And what's really going on? Find out in Rescued Tanuki. This is something that happened to me when I was climbing a mountain stream. I was with my friend who always joined me for these adventures, and as we were climbing the mountain, a nut fell from the trees above me. It's not like that's an especially rare occurrence, so I didn't pay much attention to it at first. But then, for some reason, I noticed the nuts were falling at regular intervals. And not only that, but they kept hitting me. As I was struggling up the side of an 8-meter waterfall, another nut hit me right on the head. Even though I was desperately holding on, I grabbed the nut. Looking closer, it was a walnut. But there were no walnut trees nearby. Once we reached the top, I looked around, feeling a sense of accomplishment. And then another nut fell. I looked up, but there were no trees above me. There was nothing but blue sky. I mentioned this to my friend, but he flat out ignored me. And so we started moving towards the upper reaches of the stream again. Before long, another nut hit me in the shoulder. But this time, it was from the side. Thinking someone definitely threw it at me, I looked in the direction it came from. At the same time, my friend pointed that way as well. There's something over there. I was scared, but I started walking in that direction. And what do you know? There, I found 2 tanuki sitting on the ground. Normally, I think they would run away, but the 2 of them just sat there and looked at me. Looking closer, I realized why. One of them had an injury on its leg and was bleeding. It couldn't run away. Just as my friend and I were about to leave, another nut fell from above. I turned immediately to look at the tanuki, and for some reason, I felt the need to approach them again. They were probably a pair. One of them was desperately licking the other's wound, Normally, I wouldn't have thought anything of it, like, haha, sucks to be you, as I walked away. But this time, a strange kindness came over me, and I reached out for them. They allowed me to pick them up. "You wanna eat them?" my friend asked, but that wasn't my intention at all. I didn't know whether it would work on a Tanuki or not, but I took some disinfectant out and cleaned the wound. It would probably be tough to carry them both back, so I put one in my friend's bag and then put the other in mine. We changed plans for the day and decided to head straight back down the mountain. As soon as we reached town, we took the animals straight to the vet. The vet told us that if we had been any slower, then it would have died. After that, I took both Tanuki back to my house to care for them until they were better. A few days later, they were running around like nothing had even happened. I also learnt for the first time that Tanuki love eating sardines. Of course, I couldn't keep them forever, so I turned to them and said in a joking manner, "Alright guys, isn't it about time for you to go back to the mountain now?" On my way home from work the next day, I bought enough sardines for both of them, but when I got home, they were gone. Panicking, I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find them. All that was left was a bunch of sardines. A few more days passed and I realized the Tanuki weren't the only thing that had gone missing. My bank book and signature stamp were gone as well. I quickly got new ones, but even now, once every few months, I notice that a few hundred yen have been withdrawn. So they really liked sardines that much, huh? An elementary school student doing a summer research project encounters something odd while out collecting bugs. Something they still can't explain to this day. Find out what in Hole Under the Stump. This happened when I was in the 3rd grade. During the summer holidays of that year, all I was interested in was collecting insects. I'm pretty sure it was my summer research project for school as well. I spent all my time wandering around the forest looking for rare ones. After lunch one day, I took my bug-catching net to a nearby mountain to collect some bugs. I looked everywhere, and before long, I had a bunch of bugs in my insect cage. Then I noticed a rotten tree stump nearby. Thinking I might find some stag beetle larvae in there, I approached it. It was a rather large stump, and as I got closer, I noticed there was a gap beneath it. I bent down to get a closer look, poking a nearby tree branch into it and using it as a lever to try to move it. It moved easily, even for me, an elementary school kid. As the stump rolled over, there was a large hole where it had just been. It was big enough for an adult to fit in. Whoa, that's amazing, I thought, sitting down to peer inside. It was pitch black and I couldn't see the bottom. Putting my hands on the edge so I could get a better look, I stuck my head inside. Then, someone pushed me from behind. I fell into the hole. I still clearly remember that sensation of falling. I'm gonna die, I thought. But I kept falling, on and on. At some point, I passed out. When I came back to, I was lying near a riverbank. I had no idea what had just happened. My bug-catching net and insect cage were gone. Confused, I climbed the mountain again to find them. My net was beside that stump. The stump was still lying on the ground where I left it. The hole was there too, but I think it was only around 30 centimeters deep. I put a stick inside it and then checked it with my hands, and there was definitely a solid bottom. What on earth happened to the hole that I fell into? And while my net was there, to this day I still have no idea where my insect cage went. A young man hunting in the mountains encounters a rather strange tree with a lump on it. A lump that seems to be growing and taking shape. But into what? Find out in Lump. I heard this strange story from an old guy I know from my bonsai club. This happened around the time he first started regularly entering the mountains to hunt. He was looking for game, and by the time he reached around the midway point of the mountain, he came across a flat square area around 4 meters wide. It wasn't all that far from the village, had a great view, and there was a small cedar tree growing in it. Apparently, he decided to use that area as his base of operations, stopping there to rest and eat and such. One day, while he was resting there, he looked at the cedar tree and noticed a lump on it that seemed to be moving. He went over to take a closer look and realized that a rather large area around the small lump was raised as well. The tree was swelling. But when he touched and poked it, it felt just like a regular old tree, so he didn't think much more of it and went back to hunting. 5 or so days later, after the weather had cleared, he decided to go hunting again, so he set out for his usual spot. But as soon as he saw that lump on the tree, he stopped in surprise. It was clearly much, much bigger than the last time he saw it. The area around that sharp lump had swollen into what clearly looked like a nose, eyes, and forehead. At a glance, it looked like a human face trying to emerge from the tree. Of course, even he was creeped out, so he immediately grabbed a nearby log and started smashing the face with it. And once he had broken it down into small pieces, he left and continued his hunt. Finally this week, a group of friends on a drive encounter an old lady in the mountains who seems to have lost her way. But after spending some time camping out there, they realize something odd. The date is wrong, and things seem to be repeating. What's really going on? Find out in Loop Mountain. This happened around the time I got my driver's license. I went for a drive deep in the mountains with 4 friends one day, but I wasn't a very good driver and ended up driving into a side road. The 5 of us pushed the car out and then stopped to rest for a bit. As we were resting, some nearby bamboo grass started to rustle, and thinking it was a bear, we all panicked, but instead it was just a little old lady. Seemed she was out gathering wild vegetables. Because she had been out picking all morning, she was tired and asked if we could drive her back home. And so the 6 of us got back in my car and laughed and chatted as we drove her back to her house. And on that note, I was relegated to the passenger's seat this time, and she sat on my lap muttering about how tired she was the whole time. We drove for around an hour before we reached her house, and there were several cars, as well as a police car, parked outside. The old woman's face turned pale as she wondered what was going on, and because the police were there, we got scared. We let the old lady out and then drove off right away. That night, the police came to see us. I was scared that they figured out there were 6 of us in the car, but then the police officer said, "Where did you pick that old woman up? She's been missing for 5 days now. She insists that she left only that morning and you brought her back that same afternoon. But is there anything else you can tell us?" "I have no idea. Maybe she's going senile," I said. And we waited until things cooled down a little before going to see her again to talk about what happened. According to her, she set out in the morning to pick vegetables, and then she ran into us in the afternoon. Everyone was treating her like she had gone senile, so she was pretty upset about that. And when we explained that if that was true, then she hadn't aged for 4 days, and well, she was pretty happy with that. We found her to be pretty interesting, and after that, we decided to camp in the mountains. We bought a tent, lanterns, etc., and spent 2 nights out there. Nothing of note happened, and around lunchtime, we left. I was in the bath when one of my friends called. He said that the date was weird, and that I should check the newspaper or TV. We picked the old lady up on August 1st, then went to talk to her on the 2nd. On the 3rd and 4th, we went camping. So, that day should have been August 5th, but when I looked at the newspaper, it said it was August 1st. We all got together again to figure out what was going on, and, scared, we drove back to the old woman's house. When we got there were numerous cars there, including a police one. We asked them what was going on, and they said that an old woman had set out to pick vegetables, but she hadn't returned yet. Thinking we were having deja vu, one of my friends said, "Time must have rewound somehow." He asked the officer what day it was, and he said August 1st. Then my friend said something stupid, like, "She's probably over on such and such mountain." The officer asked him why he thought that, and he said it was just a feeling, and then we left. We made our way over there ourselves to find her, but there was no sign of her. As it was getting dark, I then found the receipt for the tent and lanterns we bought in my pocket. On August 2nd, we went back to the store we bought them from and showed the staff member the receipt. "Well, that's weird," they said. "We're from the future," I joked. "Do you sell these?" But the staff member said they weren't due to go on sale until tomorrow, and then said they would check. They weren't able to find anything on the tent, but they found the exact same serial number for the lanterns. They pretended to be shocked, like we really were from the future, but we played it off and then quickly left. I'm sure they just thought we were some weirdos, and that was it. Confused, we all had a few drinks together and joked about how we were now a few days older than everyone else. Then I got a phone call that night from the police. They said they got my number from one of my friends. Apparently, they found the old woman's body in that area we mentioned. They asked us to come in for questioning, as they suspected we hit her with my car and then fled the scene. But in the end, her cause of death was determined to be freezing to death. It was summer in the mountains, so it was weird that she could have frozen to death to begin with. We tried to tell them what happened to us, but in the end they said it was too much trouble to deal with and they brushed us off. A massive thank you and shout out to this week's Kami tier members, LSC, Emerald and Kenneth Kawamoto. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Kowabana Volume 15, out right now, and check out our merchandise store at kowabana-shop.fourthwall.com. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras. or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Kowabana Japan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.